All right, so we're diving deep today into what really makes companies great.
Not just good, but like lastingly great.
Exactly. And, we're going to be drawing on Jim Collins's Good to Great, which is kind of a classic in the business world.
Yeah, a total must read for anyone who wants to, build something that really lasts.
Absolutely. And we've also got some interesting perspectives from a podcast discussion on the same topic.
Yeah, some really smart folks chiming in with their thoughts on Colin's work.
So to kick things off, Collins studied over 1,400 companies.
1435 to be exact.
Wow, yeah, 1,435 companies over 5 years. And what's crazy is what he found about leadership. Like, it kind of flips the script on what we usually think makes a successful CEO.
Yeah, you'd think it's all about being super charismatic,
Mhm.
the Steve Jobs type.
Right, the big personality who rallies the troops.
But Collins found that the most successful leaders are actually what he calls level 5 leaders.
Okay. And what makes them different?
They're not necessarily the loudest voices in the room.
Really?
Yeah, they're often humble. Yeah, they put the company's success above their own ego.
So it's not about them being the star.
No, they're more focused on building something great, even if it means staying out of the spotlight.
That's interesting because in the podcast, they talked about how surprising this finding was.
Oh, yeah. One of the guests was like, wait, hold on. Are you telling me that the quiet ones are actually the ones to watch out for?
And I think that's something for all of us to think about, right?
Absolutely.
Like, have you ever noticed that in your own work experience? That sometimes the most effective leaders aren't necessarily the ones who are always trying to be the center of attention.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that firsthand.
Hmm.
Sometimes the people who get the most done are the ones working quietly behind the scenes,
Yeah.
just heads down, focused on the task at hand.
And they're not seeking recognition for it.
Nope. They just want to see the company succeed. And that kind of ties into another big concept from the book that the podcast folks were really excited about.
You talking about the hedgehog concept?
For Hedgehog Concept, yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, one of the podcast hosts even said it was the most important takeaway from the whole book.
And for good reason, it's all about figuring out what you can be the absolute best at.
Okay, not just good at, but the best.
Right, not trying to be all things to all people, but really honing in on your unique strengths.
So it's kind of like finding your superpower in a way.
Exactly. And Colin says it's about finding the intersection of three things: what you're deeply passionate about, what you can truly excel at, and what actually drives your market.
So it's got to be something you love, something you're good at, and something people actually want.
Yeah, all three have to be there for it to be your hedgehog.
I like that. So give me an example of how that would play out in the real world.
Okay, so say you've got a tech startup that's amazing at developing software, like truly innovative stuff,
Yeah.
but they also dabble in hardware and offer some marketing services.
Okay, it sounds like they're trying to do a lot.
Yeah, and they might be decent at those other things, but to really become great, they need to focus on what makes them truly unique, that killer software.
So double down on their superpower.
Exactly, because that's where they have the potential to be world class.
Makes sense. So thinking about our listeners,
Yeah.
what would you say is the importance of them identifying their own hedgehog?
Well, it's all about making sure you're putting your energy in the right place.
So not wasting time on things you're just okay at.
Right, because if you want to achieve something truly remarkable, you need to focus on what you can be the best at.
Okay, so let's say we've figured out our hedgehog now. How do we actually start making progress towards greatness?
That's where the flywheel effect comes in.
Okay, the flywheel. That sounds interesting.
It's actually a really powerful analogy that Collins uses to explain how momentum builds over time.
Okay, so paint us a picture here. What's the flywheel all about?
So picture a giant, heavy flywheel, like one of those massive wheels you see in old factories.
Okay, got it.
At first, it takes a ton of effort to get it moving, even just a little bit.
So it's not easy to get started.
Nope. But if you keep pushing consistently, even with small efforts, it slowly starts to turn.
Okay, I'm seeing where this is going.
And as it gains momentum, each push makes it spin faster and faster until it's almost impossible to stop.
Whoa! So it's like a snowball effect.
And exactly, it's the compound effect of consistent, focused action over time.
And how does this relate to the hedgehog concept we were talking about earlier?
Well, the hedgehog concept gives you that focus. By concentrating your energy on your hedgehog, you're making sure that every push on the flywheel is moving you in the right direction.
So you're not wasting any effort.
Right. Every action is building towards your ultimate goal.
I love that. So for our listeners out there, what are some examples of flywheels that might already be in motion in their lives?
Well, think about any habit you've built, whether it's exercising regularly or learning a new skill.
Or even just showing up to work every day and doing your best.
Exactly. Those are all flywheels in a way.
Because the more consistent you are, the more momentum you build.
And the easier it becomes to keep going.
So it's not about making some huge drastic change overnight.
Nope. It's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
I love that. So we've got the right leadership, we found our hedgehog, and we're building momentum with the flywheel. But Collins found one more crucial element that's kind of a head scratcher.
Oh, yeah, this one's a biggie.
And the podcast really hammered this point home. It's about getting the right people on board before you even figure out your strategy.
First, who, then what, as Collins puts it.
Yeah, which seems counterintuitive, right? You'd think you'd need a plan first.
You would, but think about it. If you've got a team full of people who aren't aligned with your core values or who just aren't the right fit for the journey, even the best strategy in the world won't get you very far.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand.
Exactly. It's just not going to work.
So what's an example of how this first who then what principle might play out in a real world scenario?
Okay, let's say you're a company that's passionate about sustainability and you want to make a real impact on the environment, but you've got some team members who are resistant to change or who don't really buy into the mission.
So even if you come up with a brilliant strategy for going green,
It's probably going to be an uphill battle because you don't have the right people on board to make it happen.
so how do you make sure you've got the right people on the bus, as Collins puts it?
Well, it starts with being really clear about your values and your vision for the future, and then being willing to make tough decisions if you need to.
So sometimes letting go of people who aren't a good fit,
Yeah, even if they're talented or have been with the company for a long time.
because ultimately the success of the whole team depends on having everyone pulling in the same direction.
Exactly, and that's how you create a culture where everyone is excited to come to work and contribute to something bigger than themselves.
So to wrap up this deep dive into going from good to great, it's not about some magic formula or overnight success.
It's about being intentional about your leadership, focusing on what you can be the best at building momentum through consistent action, and surrounding yourself with the right people.
And coming back to the hedgehog concept, what's that one thing you can focus on every single day to make the biggest impact on your long-term success?
What's your hedgehog, and what's one small push you can make today to get that flywheel spinning?
Great stuff to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.